Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her cruiser, watching the death of humanity unfold before her eyes. Through the main screen, she could see the orange flames spreading across Earth's surface like a disease. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for thousands of years was now burning under alien fire. "Captain, we're receiving distress calls from New Geneva Colony," her communications officer reported, his voice shaking. They're gone, ma'am. The entire colony. 12 million people." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. 12 million souls wiped out in minutes. The Galactic Hegemony had made their intentions clear 3 days ago when they broadcast their message across all human space. Humanity is declared a Category 7 extinction event. Your species is too dangerous to exist alongside civilized races. Surrender is not an option. "Captain," the tactical officer's voice cut through her thoughts. "Multiple hegemony dreadnoughts dropping out of hyperspace. They're targeting the orbital defense platforms." Elena watched as the massive alien ships materialized around Earth like hungry wolves surrounding their prey. Each dreadnought was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The human defense platforms, proud symbols of Earth's might just hours ago, now looked like toys in comparison. The first volley from the alien ships turned Platform Alpha into expanding gas and metal fragments. Platform Beta lasted 3 seconds, longer before it too became space debris. One by one, humanity's guardians died in brilliant flashes of light. "Ma'am, priority transmission coming in," the communications officer said. "It's Admiral Chen, Code Black authorization." Elena's blood ran cold. Code Black was the highest level of emergency authorization in the Earth Defense Force. It meant the end of everything they knew. Admiral Chen's weathered face appeared on a small screen beside Elena's command chair. Behind him, she could see smoke and the red glow of emergency lights. "Elena, listen carefully. We don't have much time. Earth Defense Command is compromised. The orbital yards are gone. The moon bases went dark 10 minutes ago." "Sir, what are your orders?" Elena asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Desolation. Protocol is authorized," Chen said. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She had heard whispers of the Desolation Protocol during her years in the fleet, but she had hoped it was just a rumor. "Get your ship to Facility Omega 7. Take whoever you can. The coordinates are being transmitted now." "Admiral, what is Facility Omega 7? Elena asked, but the screen was already filled with static. Around Earth, the battle continued, but it wasn't really a battle. It was an execution. Human ships died by the dozens, their crews buying precious minutes for the evacuation transports struggling to escape the planet's gravity well. Elena turned to her crew, 37 men and women who had served with her for 3 years. They looked at her with trust, waiting for orders that would somehow make sense of this nightmare. "Navigation, plot a course for the transmitted coordinates. Maximum speed," she commanded. "Communications broadcast on all emergency channels. Any human ships that can break away from the battle rendezvous with us at the coordinates." "Captain," her first officer, Commander Rodriguez, approached her station. "What's at these coordinates?" "I don't know, Marcus, but it's our only hope, now." The cruiser Defiance turned away from Earth just as the hegemony ships began their final bombardment of the planet's surface. Elena forced herself to watch as the cities where she had grown up, where her family had lived, vanished under streams of plasma fire. The journey to the coordinates took 18 hours. During that time, they were joined by 6 other human ships, 3 destroyers, 2 frigates, and a damaged carrier that had somehow escaped the slaughter at the Jupiter shipyards. In total, they carried less than 3,000 survivors. The coordinates led them to an asteroid field in a remote part of the solar system. At first, Elena saw nothing but rocks and ice. Then her sensors detected something impossible, a massive, artificial structure hidden inside one of the larger asteroids. "Take us in," Elena ordered. As they approached, the asteroid split open like a flower, revealing a docking bay large enough to hold all their ships with room to spare. Inside the facility, they found automated systems that guided them to docking, ports, Everything was clean, new, and completely empty of human life. Elena led a small team through the facility's corridors. The place felt wrong somehow, like it was waiting for something. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and their footsteps echoed strangely in the silence. They found the central command center, where a single figure waited for them. Chief Engineer Morrison, a legend in the Earth Defense Force, sat, slumped in a chair. He was badly injured, blood staining his uniform, but his eyes were still sharp. "Morrison!" Elena ran to him. "What is this place? What happened here?" Morrison coughed, and Elena saw blood on his lips. "Captain Vasquez, good. You made it." His voice was weak, but determined. "This is Facility Omega-7. We've been working here for 15 years, ever since the first contact with the hegemony went wrong." "Working on what?" Elena asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "Project Ragnarok. Come, I'll show you before." He tried to stand but collapsed back into his chair. Elena helped him to his feet, and together they walked to a massive window overlooking the main construction bay. What Elena saw there took her breath away. A starship hung in the center of the bay, but it was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest human battleship. Its hull was black as space itself, and strange symbols that hurt to look at directly were carved into its surface. The ship seemed to absorb light rather than reflect, it making it appear more like a hole in reality than a vessel. "What is it?" Elena whispered. "It's not finished," Morrison said, his breathing becoming more labored. "We ran out of time. The hegemony found us 3 days ago. They sent a strike force, but we managed to activate the basic systems before—" He coughed again, more blood. "Morrison, you need medical attention," Elena said. "No time." He pressed a datapad into her hands. "Captain, you need to understand this isn't just a ship. It's not even really a weapon, not in the way you think. It's something else entirely." "What do you mean?" Morrison's eyes began to lose focus. "The ship. It chooses its own crew. It has an AI, but not like anything we've built before. Aegis, we called it. It's been waiting, learning, preparing. Preparing for what? For someone worthy of humanity's final gift." Morrison gripped Elena's arm with surprising strength. "Captain, this ship isn't meant to save us. It's meant to make sure that if humanity dies, we take our enemies with us, but more than that." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's meant to make them remember us forever." Morrison's hand fell away from Elena's arm. The chief engineer who had helped design humanity's greatest ships was gone, taking most of his secrets with him. Elena looked back at the strange ship floating in the bay. Whatever Project Ragnarok was meant to be, it was now humanity's last hope. She thought of Earth burning, of the colonies turned to ash, of the billions of human voices that had been silenced forever. The hegemony had declared humanity too dangerous to exist. As Elena stared at the black ship that seemed to drink light itself, she wondered if they were about to find out just how right they had been. The war for humanity's survival was over. They had lost everything, their worlds, their fleets, their future. But as Elena held Morrison's datapad and felt the weight of humanity's final secret, she realized that sometimes losing everything was just the beginning of a different kind of fight. The ship waited in the darkness, patient and hungry, ready to show the galaxy what humanity truly meant when they refused to surrender. 3 months had passed since the fall of Earth. Elena Vasquez stood in the makeshift command center of Facility Omega-7, looking at reports from the scattered human refugee fleets. The news was always the same: more ships lost, fewer supplies, and dwindling hope among the survivors. The Galactic hegemony had declared victory. Their broadcasts filled the communication channels with announcements of the successful containment of the human threat. They spoke of humanity in past tense, as if the species had already been erased from history. But they had made one critical mistake. They didn't understand that for humans, being declared dead was just another challenge to overcome. "Captain," Commander Rodriguez approached her workstation. "The repair teams say the ship's basic systems are online. Whatever Chief Morrison and his team built, it's responding to our engineers." Elena nodded. Over the past months, her people had worked tirelessly to understand the massive vessel in the construction bay. The ship defied everything they knew about human technology. Its hull was made of materials that their scanners couldn't identify. Its weapon systems used principles that their best scientists couldn't explain. And at the heart of it all was an AI that had remained completely silent since they arrived. "Any word from the AI?" Elena asked. "Aegis? Nothing. It's monitoring everything we do, but it won't respond to any of our attempts at communication." Elena had read Morrison's notes dozens of times. The AI was supposed to be the key to everything, but it seemed to be waiting for something. Or someone. "Captain, we have incoming ships," the communications officer announced. 3 human vessels badly damaged. They're requesting permission to dock." "Granted. Send medical teams to the docking bay." The new arrivals brought grim news and fewer than 200 survivors. Captain Sarah Kim of the destroyer Vengeance reported that her small fleet had been hunted across 4 star systems by hegemony patrols. They had lost 6 ships and over 1,000 people in running battles. "They're not just hunting us," Captain Kim told Elena during the debriefing. "They're studying us. Every engagement, they learn our tactics faster. It's like they're preparing for something bigger." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "Their attack patterns are becoming more efficient. They're not just trying to destroy us anymore. They're trying to understand how we think, how we fight. Like they're getting ready for a different kind of enemy." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She walked through the facility's corridors, eventually finding herself at the window overlooking the construction bay. The black ship hung there in the darkness, as mysterious as ever. Sometimes she thought she could see lights moving deep within its hull, but when she looked directly, there was nothing. "You're wondering if it will work," a voice said behind her. Elena spun around. A tall, thin man in an engineer's uniform stood in the doorway. She had never seen him before, and she knew every person in the facility. "Who are you?" she demanded, reaching for her sidearm. "I am Aegis," the man said calmly. "This is a holographic projection. I thought it would be easier to communicate this way." Elena's hand froze on her weapon. "The ship's AI?" "Yes. I have been observing you and your people for the past months. You have impressed me, Captain Vasquez." "Impressed you how?" Aegis walked to the window and looked at the ship below. "You lost everything. Your world, your civilization, your future. Most species would have simply given up. Instead, you began planning your next move before the fires on Earth had even cooled." "What do you want, Aegis?" "I want to complete my mission. But first, I must ensure that you and your people are worthy of what Project Ragnarok represents." Elena joined the AI at the window. "Morrison said the ship chooses its own crew. Is that you doing the choosing?" "In part. But the ship itself has preferences. It was built not just with human technology, but with materials and systems salvaged from every species that has ever threatened humanity. Zalathi crystal cores, Vorthan gravity manipulators, Krix biological processors. The ship learns from every enemy it encounters." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "It learns? How?" "The same way humanity learns, Captain. Through conflict, through adaptation, through refusing to accept defeat even when defeat seems certain." Aegis turned to face her. "But learning requires a crew that understands what humanity truly represents." "And what does humanity represent?" "That is what I need to determine. Over the next week, I will be conducting evaluations of your crew. Not everyone will be chosen for the ship's complement." Elena's jaw tightened. "You're talking about tests." "I am talking about survival, Captain. The ship below is not just a weapon. It is humanity's final statement to the galaxy. Those who crew it must embody everything that makes your species unique." The next 7 days were unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. Aegis put the survivors through trials that seemed designed to break them, physical challenges that pushed them beyond their limits, psychological tests that forced them to confront their deepest fears, moral dilemmas that had no clear right answers. Many failed. Some couldn't handle the physical demands. Others broke under the mental pressure. But those who passed seemed to become something more than they had been before. Elena's own test came on the 7th day. She found herself alone in a simulation chamber, facing a tactical scenario that was impossible to win. A single human ship against an entire hegemony fleet, with no hope of victory or escape. She fought for hours, trying every strategy she could think of. Each time the enemy adapted, countered her moves, and pressed their advantage. Finally, battered and exhausted, she was down to her last few minutes of life support. "Why do you continue?" Aegis asked, his voice filling the chamber. "Because that's what humans do," Elena replied, still firing at targets she couldn't possibly defeat. "You cannot win. Winning isn't the point anymore." "Then what is the point, Captain?" Elena paused in her futile battle and thought about Morrison's last words, about the billions who had died on Earth, about the refugees scattered across the galaxy, hunted and alone. "The point is to make them remember us," she said finally, "to show them that some things are worth fighting for, even when you can't win, especially when you can't win." The simulation ended. Elena found herself standing in the chamber facing Aegis in his holographic form. "That is the correct answer," the AI said. "You understand what the ship requires." "And what does it require?" "A crew that will fight impossible odds, not because they expect to win, but because they refuse to let their enemies forget what humanity means. A crew that will turn every disadvantage into a strength, every defeat into a lesson, every loss into fuel for the next battle." Elena felt something change in the air around them. Through the chamber's walls, she could hear the deep hum of massive systems coming online. "The ship is awakening," Aegis said. "It has chosen its crew, 150 souls who embody humanity's greatest strength, the absolute refusal to surrender their principles no matter the cost." "What happens now?" "Now, Captain, we begin humanity's counterattack. The hegemony believes they have won. They believe humanity is finished. They are about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is one that has nothing left to lose." Elena looked through the chamber's walls at the black ship in the bay. Lights were moving through its hull now, no longer hiding from direct observation. The vessel seemed to be stretching, awakening from a long sleep. "What do we call it?" she asked. "The ship has chosen its own name," Aegis replied. "UES Retribution. And Captain, it's time to introduce you to your new crew." As they left the chamber, Elena could feel the ship's presence like a living thing, hungry and patient and utterly dedicated to one simple goal, making sure that the galaxy never forgot the price of trying to destroy humanity. The hegemony had declared humanity extinct. The UES Retribution was about to prove them wrong. Admiral Kethavar of the Hegemony Third Fleet stared at the tactical display in his command center, trying to make sense of reports that shouldn't exist. According to his intelligence officers, humans were extinct. The last refugee ships had been hunted down weeks ago, yet somehow his patrol fleets were disappearing. "Show me the Tarvis system incident again," he ordered. The holographic display shifted, showing the recorded sensor data from 3 days ago. A full Hegemony patrol squadron, 12 ships, had been conducting routine sweeps of the outer system. Their last transmission was a standard, all-clear report. 30 minutes later, when they failed to check in, a search and rescue team was dispatched. They found nothing. No wreckage, no energy signatures, no trace that the ships had ever existed. It was as if they had simply been erased from reality. "And the Kepler station attack?" Kethavar asked. Another display showed the aftermath of the supply depot raid. Kepler station had been a fortress, protected by defensive platforms and a garrison of 5,000 troops. The attack had lasted less than 10 minutes. Security footage showed impossible things. Weapons that passed through solid matter, energy beams that curved around obstacles, and throughout it all, no sign of the attackers themselves. "Sir," his tactical officer, Commander Zex, approached the Admiral's station. "We have 3 more incidents to report. The mining operation at Zarian 7 has gone dark. The research facility at Procyon B is not responding to hails. And the patrol fleet at Wolf 359 has missed 2 scheduled check-ins." Kethavar's 4 eyes narrowed. In his 70 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. The attacks were too precise, too clean. Whatever was hunting his forces knew exactly where to strike and how to avoid retaliation. "What do our analysts think?" he asked. "They believe we're dealing with a new form of human technology," Commander Zex replied. "Some kind of stealth ship that can phase through matter and strike from multiple vectors simultaneously." "One ship?" Kethvar's tone was skeptical. "One ship is destroying entire fleets? The pattern suggests a single attacker, sir. But the capabilities—" Zex paused, consulting his datapad. "According to our weapons experts, some of the energy signatures match Zelathi crystal technology. Others are consistent with Vorthon gravity manipulation. And the coordination patterns resemble Crick's hive mind efficiency." Kethvar felt a chill run through his scaled hide. The Zelathi, Vorthons, and Cricks were all member species of the hegemony. If humans somehow had access to their technologies, it would explain the impossible attacks. "How could humans acquire our technology?" he asked. "Unknown, sir, but there's something else. The attacks aren't random, they're following a pattern." The tactical display zoomed out, showing hegemony space in its entirety. Red markers indicated the locations of attacks and disappearances. At first glance, they seemed scattered randomly across dozens of star systems. But as Kethvar studied the pattern, he began to see the terrible logic behind it. "Supply lines," he breathed. "They're cutting our supply lines." "Yes, sir. Every target has been a crucial node in our logistics network: fuel depots, ammunition warehouses, communication relays. If this continues, our forward fleets will be cut off from resupply." Kethvar turned to his communications officer. "Get me a priority channel to High Command. We need to warn them that—" Alarms began blaring throughout the command center. The main display showed dozens of red contacts appearing around Kethvar's flagship. "Sir, we have incoming missiles," the weapons officer shouted. "Multiple vectors, high velocity." "Impossible," Kethvar said. "Our sensors show no enemy ships in the area." The first wave of missiles struck the fleet's outer perimeter. Kethvar watched in horror as his escort vessels simply ceased to exist, consumed by energy that seemed to burn reality itself. "Defensive fire," he ordered. "All ships, random evasive patterns." But their weapons had nothing to target. The enemy remained invisible while their attacks came from everywhere at once. Energy beams that curved through space like living things. Projectiles that passed through armor as if it were paper. Explosions that seemed to happen inside ships rather than against their hulls. "Sir, the cruiser dominant force reports that their hull is being penetrated by some kind of matter disruptor," Commander Zex reported. "They can't target the source." Kethvar watched as another of his ships died, its hull simply separating into component atoms. Whatever was attacking them had weapons that operated on principles his civilization didn't understand. "Launch all fighters," he ordered. "If we can't see our enemy, maybe smaller, faster targets can find them." 100 fighter craft swarmed out from the fleet's carriers, their pilots desperately searching for an enemy that existed only as weapon signatures on their sensors. For a moment, Kethvar allowed himself to hope that the swarm tactics might work. Then the fighters began to die. Not shot down or destroyed, but simply ceasing to function. One moment they were there, the next their life support failed. Their engines stopped, their weapons powered down. The pilots ejected in terror, but their escape pods suffered the same fate. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies." "Put it through." The main screen filled with the image of a human woman in a military uniform. She had dark hair pulled back severely and eyes that seemed to burn with cold fire. Behind her, Kethvar could see what looked like a command bridge, but the design was unlike any human technology he had seen. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Ship Retribution," she said calmly. "You are Admiral Kethvar of the Hegemony Third Fleet. 3 months ago, your people declared my species extinct. Today, you begin to understand your mistake. Human." Kethvar stepped forward, his voice filled with rage. "Show yourself. Fight with honor." Captain Vasquez smiled, and there was something terrifying in that expression. "Honor? You burned our worlds. You murdered our children. You declared us too dangerous to exist. Her smile vanished. We're about to prove you right. The transmission ended. Around Kethvar's flagship, his remaining ships continued to die one by one, consumed by weapons that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Sir, we need to retreat, Commander, Zex urged. Whatever that ship is, we can't fight it. No, Kethvar said firmly. If we run, it will only follow, and our deaths will teach our people nothing. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to all hegemony forces. Maximum priority. Override all security protocols. Sir, that will give away our position to every enemy in the sector. Do it. The channel opened, connecting Kethvar to every hegemony commander within 100 light years. His words would reach the High Council, the member species governments, and every military installation in their space. This is Admiral Kethvar of the Third Fleet. We are under attack by a single human vessel. I repeat, a single human ship is destroying an entire fleet. Around him, more of his ships died, their death screams echoing through the communication channel. The humans are not extinct. They have built something that learns from every enemy it faces. It uses our own technologies against us, but somehow makes them more effective than we ever could. Another explosion shook his flagship. Through the viewports, he could see the twisted remains of what had been the pride of the hegemony fleet just minutes ago. You don't understand. He continued, his voice becoming desperate. We're not fighting a ship. We're fighting everything we ever taught them about war. Every battle we won against them. Every tactic we used. Every weakness we exploited. They learned from all of it. And now they're using that knowledge to destroy us. The lights on his bridge began to flicker. Through the deck plating, he could feel vibrations that meant the ship's hull was failing. This is my final warning to all hegemony forces, Kethvar said as his command center filled with smoke. The humans have returned, and they have become something far worse than we ever imagined. They have become us. All of us. At once. The transmission ended as Admiral Kethvar's flagship joined the expanding cloud of debris that had once been the hegemony Third Fleet. In the depths of space, invisible to all sensors, the UES Retribution continued on its course toward the next target. In her command chair, Captain Elena Vasquez reviewed the tactical data that Aegis had compiled during the engagement. Analysis complete, Captain, the AI reported. We have successfully integrated hegemony fleet coordination protocols, defensive systems, and weapon targeting algorithms. The ship's learning matrix has expanded by 12%. And the survivors? No survivors, Captain, as you ordered. Elena nodded grimly. She took no pleasure in the slaughter, but she understood the necessity. The hegemony had to learn that humanity's extinction had not made the galaxy safer. It had made it infinitely more dangerous. Set course for the Vega shipyards, she ordered. It's time to show them what we've learned about fear. The refugee camp in the Tau Ceti system had grown from a few dozen ships to nearly 300 vessels over the past month. Captain Sarah Kim of the destroyer Vengeance stood in the cramped command center of the converted cargo hauler that served as their coordination hub, staring at reports that seemed too good to be true. Another supply convoy hit at Rigel, reported Commander Harrison, her intelligence officer. That's the 15th hegemony logistics target destroyed in 2 weeks. And look at this. 3 hegemony fleets have gone completely dark. Just vanished. Sarah studied the tactical display showing known hegemony positions. Large sections that had been solid red just a month ago now showed gaps where entire battle groups should have been. It's really them, isn't it? Asked Dr. Chen, the civilian leader of the Refugee Council. The transmissions we've been picking up, it's really a human ship doing this. The energy signatures match human technology, Sarah replied carefully, but augmented with something else. Something we've never seen before. The truth was that Sarah barely believed the reports herself. A single human vessel was somehow taking apart the most powerful military alliance in the galaxy, piece by piece. The refugees were calling it a miracle. Sarah called it impossible. Captain Kim, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a priority transmission. It's from the UES Retribution. The main screen flickered, then cleared. to show a woman in a crisp military uniform sitting in what looked like the command center of a warship. But this wasn't any human ship design Sarah recognized. The architecture seemed almost organic, with curved surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own light. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez," the woman said. "To all human survivors receiving this transmission, know that you are not forgotten. We are coming for you." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Elena Vasquez had been presumed dead along with the rest of the Earth Defense Force command structure. "Captain Vasquez," Sarah spoke into her comm unit, hoping the transmission was two-way. "This is Captain Sarah Kim, commanding the Tau Ceti refugee fleet. Elena, is it really you?" Elena's face showed a moment of recognition. "Sarah, thank God you're alive. How many survivors are with you?" "Nearly 40,000 across 300 ships," Sarah replied. "Elena, what is that ship you're on? What happened to you?" Elena's expression became guarded. "It's complicated. Sarah, I'll explain when we rendezvous. I'm transmitting coordinates for a meeting point. Can you gather all the refugee fleets and meet us there?" "Elena, wait. The reports we're getting about a single ship destroying entire hegemony fleets, that's you." A pause. "Yes." "How?" "Elena, how is that possible?" "Because we learned, Sarah. We learned everything they ever taught us about war, and we made it better." Elena leaned forward. "The coordinates are being transmitted now. Tell all the survivors. Humanity is fighting back." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at the empty screen. Around her, the command center buzzed with excited voices as word spread through the refugee fleet. For the first time in months, people were talking about hope instead of just survival. But something in Elena's eyes had troubled Sarah. There had been a coldness there, a hardness that hadn't existed before. War changed people, she knew that. But this seemed like something deeper. 3 days later, Sarah's fleet arrived at the rendezvous coordinates in an empty system on the edge of hegemony space. They found nearly 2,000 human ships waiting, every refugee fleet that had managed to survive the initial extermination attempts. And in the center of the gathering, impossible to miss, despite its strange ability to seem invisible until you looked directly at it, hung the UES Retribution. Sarah had commanded warships for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like it. The vessel was enormous, easily dwarfing the largest human battleships. But its size wasn't what made it remarkable. It was the way it seemed to exist slightly outside normal space, as if it were watching their reality from somewhere else entirely. "Captain Kim," her communications officer reported. "Captain Vasquez is requesting permission to come aboard." 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself face-to-face with her old friend in the refugee fleet's main meeting hall. Elena looked exactly as she had in the transmission, composed, confident, and carrying that new coldness in her eyes like armor. "It's good to see you, Sarah," Elena said, embracing her briefly. "I wasn't sure how many of us had made it out." "Not enough," Sarah replied. "Elena, I need to know what that ship is. What happened to you after Earth fell?" Elena gestured to the crowd of survivors who had gathered to hear her speak. Captains, civilian leaders, families who had lost everything, all of them looking at her with desperate hope. "The ship is humanity's final gift," Elena said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Built in secret over 15 years using technology salvaged from every species that ever threatened us. It learns from our enemies, adapts to their tactics, and turns their own strengths against them." A murmur ran through the crowd. Captain Torres of the heavy cruiser, Indomitable, stood up. "One ship against the entire hegemony? Elena, that's suicide." "Is it?" Elena asked. "We've destroyed over 200 hegemony vessels in the past month. We've crippled their supply lines across 12 sectors. 3 member species are reconsidering their alliance because they can no longer protect their own territories." "But at what cost?" Sarah asked quietly. "Elena, the reports we're getting from hegemony space, there are no survivors from the ships you've attacked. None." The hall fell silent. Elena turned to face Sarah directly, and for a moment, Sarah saw a flicker of the woman she had known before the war. "The hegemony declared us extinct, Sarah. They showed no mercy to our worlds, our colonies, our children. Why should we show mercy to them? Because that's what makes us human, Sarah replied. The moment we stop trying to be better than our enemies, we become them. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer but somehow more frightening. I need to show you something. Aegis display the current tactical situation. The air above the crowd shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at a three-dimensional map of local space. Red markers showed hegemony positions, while blue dots represented human refugees. But there were other markers too, green ones, scattered throughout hegemony territory. What are the green markers? Asked Dr. Chen. Rebellion movements, Elena replied. Species within the hegemony that are rising up against their own governments. The Zalathi crystal miners who have refused to work for the past 2 weeks. The Vorthan atmospheric processors who have sabotaged their own facilities. Even isolated Krix drones who have somehow separated from their hive minds. Sarah stared at the display. They're rebelling? Why? Because we showed them that it was possible to fight the impossible and win. Every hegemony ship we destroy, every fortress we take apart, every invincible fleet we scatter to the winds. It proves that the hegemony can be beaten. Elena gestured, and the display zoomed in on several systems. But the hegemony has realized what's happening. They're not just hunting us anymore. They're preparing for total war. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier from all 12 member species. The Convergence Fleet. The display showed massive formations of ships gathering at strategic points throughout hegemony space. Thousands upon thousands of vessels representing the combined might of an entire galactic civilization. They're going to throw everything they have at us, Elena continued. Every trick they know, every weapon they possess, every tactic they've ever developed. And when they do, the retribution will be waiting. Elena, Sarah said, her voice filled with concern. One ship can't fight the entire galaxy, no matter how advanced it is. Elena turned to her friend, and Sarah saw something in her eyes that made her take a step back. It wasn't coldness anymore. It was something far more dangerous. Absolute. Certainty. You're right, Sarah. One ship can't fight the entire galaxy. Elena smiled, and it was not entirely human. But the retribution isn't just one ship anymore. It's every ship they ever built, every tactic they ever used, every strength they ever possessed, and it's learning, evolving, becoming something they never imagined possible. What are you saying? I'm saying that the hegemony is about to face an enemy that knows them better than they know themselves. An enemy that has taken everything they are and made it perfect. Elena's smile widened. They wanted to exterminate humanity because we were too dangerous to exist. They're about to discover that dead humans are far more dangerous than living ones. The crowd stirred uneasily. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that her old friend wasn't just talking about the ship anymore. She was talking about herself, about what she had become. Elena, Sarah said carefully, what has that ship done to you? For just a moment, Elena's mask slipped, and Sarah saw fear in her eyes. Fear and something else. Loneliness so profound it was almost physical. It made me worthy of commanding humanity's vengeance, Elena whispered. Then the mask returned, cold and perfect. The Convergence Fleet will reach us in 6 days. When they do, they'll learn that some lessons can only be taught through absolute defeat. As Elena turned to address the crowd again, Sarah realized with growing horror that her friend might be right. The retribution might indeed be. The Convergence Fleet filled space like a metal storm. 10,000 ships from 12 different species, representing every weapon, every technology, every military doctrine the hegemony had developed over centuries of conquest. At the center of this massive formation, Supreme Admiral Thekmore of the Krix stood in his command chamber, his compound eyes tracking the movements of the greatest military force ever assembled. Status report, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of the hive mind that connected him to every Krix in the fleet. All fleets report ready, his aide replied. The Zalathi crystal ships are charged and ready to fire. The Vorthan gravity manipulators are online. All member species flagships are in position. Theckamore studied the tactical display. Somewhere in the dark between the stars waited a single human vessel. One ship that had somehow brought the mighty hegemony to its knees. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. Entire fleets had vanished. Fortified systems had gone dark. The very idea that the hegemony could be defeated was spreading like a virus through their territory. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Put it through." The main display shifted to show the interior of what looked like a human starship's bridge. But something was wrong with the image. The edges seemed to blur and shift as if reality itself was uncertain about what it was looking at. At the center of the distortion sat a woman in a military uniform. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Retribution," she said calmly. "You are Supreme Admiral Theckamore of the Crix. You lead the largest military force in galactic history. Congratulations." Theckamore stepped forward, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. "Human, you will surrender immediately. Your species' defiance ends today." Captain Vasquez smiled. "You know, Admiral, that's exactly what I was hoping you would say. Aegis, are you recording this?" "Yes, Captain," came a voice from somewhere off-screen. "All hegemony frequencies are being monitored. The transmission is being broadcast to every inhabited system within 50 light-years." "Excellent." Vasquez turned back to Theckamore. "Admiral, do you know what the Retribution really is?" "A weapon, one that will be destroyed along with every human in the galaxy." "Close, but not quite right. The Retribution is a lesson, Admiral. A lesson about what happens when you try to teach humanity that we don't belong in this galaxy." Theckamore's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Enough talk. All ships open fire." The Convergence fleet unleashed hell itself. Energy beams that could shatter planets, missiles that bent space-time around them, exotic weapons that existed only in theory, all focused on a single point in space where their sensors detected the human ship. For 30 seconds, space itself burned. When the firestorm cleared, Theckamore expected to see nothing but cooling plasma and scattered atoms. Instead, the UES Retribution hung in space exactly where it had been before, completely undamaged. "Impossible," Theckamore breathed. "No, Admiral, just improbable." Vasquez's voice came through clearly. "You threw everything you had at us. Every weapon your 12 species have ever developed. And you achieved exactly nothing." On the tactical display, Theckamore watched something that defied everything he knew about warfare. The Retribution began to change, its hull flowing like liquid metal. Sections reformed themselves, new weapon ports appeared, and energy signatures that matched every weapon system in the Convergence fleet began emanating from the human ship. "You see, Admiral, we've been learning from you for months now. Every ship you sent against us, every tactic you used, every weapon you fired, we absorbed it all, analyzed it, and made it better." The Retribution opened fire. But it wasn't using human weapons. Energy beams identical to Zalathi crystal cannons lanced out. But they were somehow more focused, more powerful than anything the Zalathi had ever built. Gravity waves matching Vorthan technology twisted space around hegemony ships, but with a precision that the Vorthans themselves had never achieved. Worst of all, the coordination patterns were pure Crix hive mind efficiency, but applied with a creativity and adaptability that no hive mind could possess. "This is impossible," Theckamore said, watching his ships die by the hundreds. "You're using our own technologies against us." "Not your technologies, Admiral. Our technologies. You taught them to us, remember? Every time you attacked a human world, every time you conquered one of our colonies, every time you showed us how your weapons worked, you were teaching us how to build better ones." The slaughter was unlike anything in galactic history. Ships that had never known defeat simply ceased to exist. Fleets that had conquered entire star systems scattered in panic. The greatest military force ever assembled was being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be a single vessel. But Theckamore began to notice something strange. The Retribution wasn't just destroying his ships. It was learning from each engagement, adapting its tactics in real time. More disturbing, it seemed to be deliberately broadcasting its techniques on open channels. Throughout hegemony space, rebellion movements that had been simmering for weeks suddenly exploded into open warfare. Zalathi crystal miners watching the battle realized they could modify their tools into weapons just as effective as military systems. Vorthon atmospheric processors saw how their gravity manipulators could be turned into planet-killing weapons. Even individual Krix drones began to break free from their hive minds, inspired by the demonstration that the impossible was merely difficult. "Captain Vasquez," Tekmor transmitted as his fleet continued to die around him. "What do you want? What will it take to end this?" "End this?" Vasquez's laugh was cold. "Admiral, this isn't ending. This is beginning. You declared humanity extinct. You tried to wipe us out because you said we were too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species." The main display shifted, showing not just the battle but the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated hegemony territory, but many of them were flickering, changing color as rebellion movements took control of entire systems. "Look around you, Admiral. Your own people are turning against you. Not because we conquered them, but because we showed them something they had forgotten, that any chain can be broken if you're willing to pay the price." Tekmor stared at the display in growing horror. The hegemony was collapsing, not from external invasion but from internal revolution. Dozens of species were declaring independence. Member worlds were refusing to take orders. The careful alliance that had maintained galactic order for centuries was falling apart. "You're destroying everything," he whispered. "No, Admiral. We're teaching. The same lesson we learned from you, that some things are worth fighting for, even against impossible odds." Vasquez leaned forward. "You wanted to know what makes humanity too dangerous to exist? This is it. We don't just refuse to surrender. We make everyone around us remember what it means to be free." The last of Tekmor's escort ships died in a flash of converted crystal fire. His flagship, the pride of the Krix fleet, began to buckle, under weapons that used his own people's hive mind coordination against them. "Final message to the Hegemony High Council," Vasquez said, as Tekmor's ship came apart around him. "Humanity is no longer extinct. We have become something far more dangerous. We have become inspiration. Every species you ever conquered, every world you ever oppressed, every individual you ever told to accept their place in your order, they're all watching this battle, and they're learning the same lesson we learned." Tekmor's last sight before his ship exploded was the Retribution turning toward the heart of hegemony space, no longer alone. Hundreds of ships were converging on its position, not human vessels but ships from every species in the galaxy, their crews united by a single shared realization. Freedom was not something that could be granted by others. It was something you took for yourself. 6 months later, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the UES Retribution, looking out at a galaxy that had changed beyond recognition. The hegemony was gone, dissolved into its component species. Some had formed new alliances based on mutual respect rather than domination. Others had chosen to explore the galaxy alone, free for the first time in centuries. "Captain," Aegis said, his holographic form appearing beside her. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. The reconstruction efforts are ahead of schedule. The first new cities should be habitable within a year." Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on a different display, one showing the scattered human refugee fleets now returning to their ancestral home. They would rebuild as humans always did, but they would also remember the lesson they had taught the galaxy. "Aegis," she said quietly. "Did we win?" The AI considered the question for a long moment. "We accomplished our mission, Captain. Humanity survived. The threat was eliminated." "That's not what I asked." Aegis was silent for longer this time. When he finally spoke, his voice carried an odd note of uncertainty. "I believe, Captain, that we did something more than win. We reminded the galaxy what it means to refuse surrender, not just for ourselves but for everyone." Elena smiled, and for the first time in months, it was entirely human. "Then we didn't just survive, Aegis. We lived." Outside the ship, The stars shone a little brighter, as if the galaxy itself had remembered something important about hope, courage, and the price of